All right, everybody, this is episode 16. Now, a quick reminder, we put out 4 episodes every month, and we release them on Monday. April happens to have 5 Mondays this month, so that means that next week is one of the few times during the year that we actually end up skipping a week, but we will be back on May 6th.
We have a bunch of news this week.
And we're also going to visit the Western Railroad Museum and their restoration project of the WP-165.
And drifting trains.
This is Railroad Showcase. The Western Pacific Railroad Museum has been working for a long time to get their WP-060 number 165 restored, and they are getting very close. Last year, we had the privilege of talking with Roger Stabler and Chris Allan about the work being done. Here's part 1 of that interview.
He's building a house that's taking his full time and really can't afford to be up here. So he asked me, he handed me some keys a year and a half ago and said, "It's your baby now, have fun with it." So, more keys. So, but he is still my technical advisor. We're on the phone quite often talking about which direction we want to go and what we want to do with certain components on the engine. And when his house is built, he did tell me he would come back and help me out and work on this engine again. This is a Western Pacific 165. This is an 060. It was built new in 1919 for the Bird-Eye Copper Canyon Railroad. And the WP acquired this engine in 1927, and it was then converted from coal to oil. It ran its life primarily in pictures I've seen as Portola stock. And the engine was then placed in the park at San Leandro. And when they built BART, they moved the engine then from the park at San Leandro to the fairgrounds in Pleasanton, and then I don't remember which year, but it moved to PLA at Niles to their collection. And it was a swap between the Western Pacific Railroad Museum and Niles Canyon Railway to bring the engine here. And we started this restoration in 2007, I believe, 6 or 7. We have stripped this engine down pretty much to the bare bones, and we have the tender is completed. The engine is about 90% complete now. We have a crew of guys that are doing the minor task of lapping all the valves in the cab. Most of the pipe that was under the jacket is rotten, and so all piping is having to be bent, formed, threaded new, which is just a time-consuming task. It's a jigsaw puzzle to figure out how the WP ran things, what they did with things. All of the firebox work has been completed. All the patches are in the barrel have been done. All the crown stays and rigid stays and the side sheets are done. We have some riveting to do, peening to do on some of the stays. One flexible to go in on the right-hand side. I'm in the process of rolling the rear tube sheet right now on the 2-inch. We brought our superheater flues over yesterday, and in August we'll roll those. Our clock will start in May of next year, and we hopefully have the engine in steam by August of next year. That is our goal. I just didn't know how bad an engine could be until I got involved with this one. I did one other engine. I worked on the 1233 at the old short line when it was there. And as park engines go, we didn't do near the extensive work to that we've had to do to this engine to bring it back. This engine was used as a stationary boiler for the last 3 or 4 months of its life at the WP. It was rented to a cannery in Escalon. And I did not know that you could abuse a boiler in 4 months that they did with this at Escalon. This thing was so scaled up, just unreal what we've had to dig out of this thing. And sooted up, and we lit ourselves on fire just cutting tubes out because of the amount of soot and grime that is still in those tubes from those days. And so we'd get a blowback and we'd get the sparklies sprinkling all over us while we're trying to cut everything out of this engine, you know. So this engine, the running gear of this engine is in fairly decent shape. It's the boiler that was just used up for the most part. We have replaced the tube sheet. The front tube sheet in this boiler is new. The rear one will go one more time, and then it will probably, in its next 15 year, will require a rear tube sheet. So we had to put a knuckle sheet in this boiler as well. So it's had really extensive work done in this area. You always expect the worst when you start on a park engine, you know, especially something that sat for 50 years before anybody did anything to it. So we've had great help and great support from Wasatch Mountain contractors. Steve Lee is on our advisory committee here for the engine. He's been a great help. The air pump required a grinding of its valves, an oiling, and we ran this pump for 2.5 hours one day on compressed air, and it never missed a beat. And so that was a surprise, because we figured the way everything else has looked with this engine, that it would be wasted. It'd be full of water, or we'd have nothing but major issues, but it was very clean inside. We just lapped the valves, oiled it up, and fired it up. So in some respects you get lucky. You know, the dyno came from a gentleman in Greenville who, we think it came off one of the WP derricks that was scrapped, but he had it. He sold it to us cheap, so we've acquired the dyno for the engine. I mean, the parts have slowly, people have rat-holed stuff. Headlights are one of the, I think the whistle's off the 166. I mean, it's just, people have stuff, and once they knew that we were going to fix the engine, parts became available to us that were off this series of locomotive at the WP. So it's been nice. You know. This is the biggest jigsaw puzzle, because most of this was missing. We have the H6 automatic valve here and an S6. This is a 6ET brake system, by the way. The gauges were located, I believe, on eBay and elsewhere. Steam gauges, one came from a friend, and I bought one of them on eBay. It's amazing how much stuff has showed up in the last 10 years in steam stuff that really wasn't as expensive as I expected to pay, even if I went to an auction site to acquire them. These valves were sent to a shop in San Diego and rehabbed. The valves were out of another piece of equipment here that got scrapped. So they had a steam heat car here from Amtrak, and why it had a number 6 brake system in it for whatever reason. It wasn't as complete as this, but between the two pieces we've been able to get enough parts together to put everything together. Then we sent all of our brake parts down to the shop in San Diego, distributing valve, feed valves, and had them rebuilt. Brought it back and then started the process of putting everything in. And pretty much when I came into this engine, everything from here up was missing. Feed valves were gone. Pipes down there were just cut off and gone. So it was just a matter of finding. Steve Lee provided me a Westinghouse print for the number 6, and then I spent about a week and a half up here last year by myself, where I could just sit down and think and pipe this stuff up and run the print. So we have aired up the engine and tested the brake valves, and we have minor leaks. A lot of the old cutout cocks leak, and so we have a crew that's been taking them off one at a time, and they grind the valves back in and re-grease them the way they would have done in the old days and put them back together. We're resistant to put modern valves. We're trying to keep the engine as appropriately dated as we can as far as the valves we have on the engine. So it's a lot of time-consuming task of just manual labor of reconditioning the little valves to make them work and seal up. We have a blitz here twice a year where we try to get as many of our steam guys in here, the people that want to work on the engine in here, and hit it hard. And we're getting towards the tail end. Like I said, I hope to fire it next year if all works out. So we have people from all walks of life that help us with this engine. Many people have never been in a shop environment before in their life, and sometimes that's good, some goes good, and sometimes it doesn't go so hot. But you know, we just push on and we go through it. You know, so
there's jobs for every level of person.
Yes, I've had people here. Their only job has been they've been needle scaling and priming material, but they're here every time to do it. They show up without being asked. They just show up and they drive right in and go right back to what they were doing before. So now we're doing the valve grinding and other things, and on the water steam valves. And a couple of the people doing it have never done this before, and One of them sat over here and ground that throttle for about 6 hours yesterday, and it's beautiful. It's ready to go back in there, but just had to show him how to do it, what I wanted to see out of it, and I'd go over and clean it and look at it after about every 4 or 5 times. He'd grind on it, and then, oh, needs some more, and he'd go back at it and do it some more. So, but we're getting there. So it's a great group of people that work on this. So
It's easy to see why they went to diesels.
yeah. So the diesel guys in the shop, they've helped me out with moving this stuff around and helping me get things moved into position so that we're ready to go. And we have also supplied them with material because I have a surplus of some things. And so even if I brought something in for this and then it didn't get used, I'll just put it into the general population, so to speak, for the shop so that it's available to the other departments to use the material if they need it. So it's a real sharing thing in here as far as that part goes.
When some people think of the railroads, they see a reliable but somewhat old-school method of transportation. Nowadays, though, the railroads are keeping up with the modern world we live in. Norfolk Southern just having released a new app for customers to keep track of their shipments. In fact, the new app, called NS Tracks, isn't even the first app the corporation has released, nor the second or third, but actually the fourth. The others providing features for intermodal facilities, getting shipping rates, and tracking railroad events. The Norfolk Southern press release says, NS Tracks offers customers a real-time, on-the-go connection to their shipments through a mobile experience designed in collaboration with our customers. They have updates and expanded capabilities planned to be added throughout the year.
Standard gauge logging Malley SKOOKUM arrived at Niles Canyon Railway last Wednesday, April 17th. She had been restored and briefly run up at Oregon Coast Scenic. For nearly 700 miles, the engine rode on the back of a massive multi-axle lowboy trailer. On Saturday, the Niles Canyon crew fired her up for the first time to make sure everything was okay after the road trip. The most detailed information about when SKOOKUM will be running this summer can be found on the events section of the Niles Canyon Railway Facebook page.
The Havelock Wheel Plant in Nebraska has been manufacturing wheel sets for over 40 years, and on the 16th of this month, they rolled out their 3 millionth. The Havelock shop is the last of its kind in Class 1 railroads, and even though the wheels aren't forged there, they are assembled and maintained at the facility, 400 or 500 being rolled out a day. The shop superintendent said to BNSF's Rail Talk, "The one thing that sets Havelock apart from any other mechanical facility that I've been at is the automation and the innovation. With much of the assembly process being automated, Havelock has been able to maintain a high safety standard, one that others in the industry look to."
The Palm Royal Railway experience in Florida is losing one leg of its Golden Triangle route. The operation is run by the Orlando and Northwestern Railway, which leases track from the Florida Central. The 4.5-mile portion of the line between Tavares and Mount Dora has fallen into disrepair and is no longer deemed fit for passenger service. Orland Sentinel reporter Jerry Falstrom covered the development thoroughly. He quoted Pete Petrie of Florida Central parent company Pinsley Railroad as saying, "We are not a passenger operation. This is not our business. And it's not a profit-earning enterprise for us." Evidently, necessary repairs and improvements would cost millions, and neither the Orlando and Western nor the Florida Central feels there would be sufficient return on that investment to keep that portion of the line open to the tourist trains. Trains will continue running between Tavares and Eustis. A link to the news article can be found in the show notes for this episode.
The GREENBRIER Companies has announced that it will be acquiring American Railcar Industries, valued at $400 million. GREENBRIER is one of the leaders in railcar production and servicing, both in North America and Europe. American Railcar Industries, based in Missouri, manufactures and maintains hopper and tanker cars. In addition to adding to the company's overall footprint in North America, the acquisition will add ARI's 2 facilities in Arkansas, allowing for a more geographically diverse customer base. On Tuesday the 9th, a train derailed in Dixon, Pennsylvania. The train cars affected were mainly carrying sand, and fortunately only 3 went on their sides. The specific cause is still unknown, but it's thought that a length of rail might have separated. The local sheriff, interview provided by localmemphis.com, happened to be in the parking lot facing it, right as it happened.
The train cars, the wheel on it, hopped over the track, and the rail cars started to bounce until it built momentum, and they tipped over.
This is the aftermath that crews are now trying to clean up. Sand and lumber are among the spilled cargo. The railroad company is working with Chief Belinsky to determine a cause of derailment, but initial indications lean towards a rail separation.
The ground moves, the rail moves, what's underneath it, is there enough support? It could be anything. They're going to have to determine what caused it.
If you take a look at the video, you can see the rail bending and then slamming to the ground.
The Kentucky Steam Heritage Group has announced a special excursion this July. They have leased C&O 2716 from the Kentucky Railway Museum, which is a different organization. The Alco 284 will be moved from New Haven, Kentucky to Ravenna, Kentucky, where it will receive necessary repairs. Chris Campbell, president of Kentucky Steam Heritage, posted this live stream video explaining the excursion and some of the work they've done to prepare the engine and tender for the trip.
On the crosshead guide, we've had to clean these up majorly in order to get them ready to actually move on track speed.
The first leg of the trip will be a fundraiser excursion where passengers can ride behind 2716 as it is pulled by a classic F7 on the museum tracks to Lebanon Junction. The trip will be on July 26th, and tickets range in price from $43 to $2,716 for the engineer and fireman seats.
So is this excursion actually going to be on CSX mainline?
No, I don't think so. As I understand it, it's going to be on the 11 miles of the Kentucky Railway Museum's line running out to the end where they interchange with CSX. So the excursion is on the museum trackage.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. And is the 2716 actually going to be steamed up?
No, the repairs that need to be done to the engine are going to take place at the Heritage Group's facility in Ravenna. And so they're going to be running the engine cold on this trip. It'll be pulled by the F7, but it's a fundraiser. So you get to ride behind the engine, behind an F7, out to the junction there.
It sounds interesting.
It should be. If I lived in Kentucky, I would be out there to watch it.
Yeah. Well, and getting a big steamer up and running is never a bad thing.
Absolutely not.
So the first favorite find this week is an old picture that's been circulating the internet for years. Besides the somber nature of seeing an engine dying, it's really quite striking and very dramatic. We don't actually know where the photo originated from, but the December 2000 issue of Canadian Railway Observations gives us a little context. They said that it was an engine compartment fire on an FP9 unit number 4062 on the Canadian Pacific. We do know that this image was taken in 1975, but beyond that, not much else. If you know, please let us know.
What an incredible image. I mean, of course, like you said, it is horrible seeing a locomotive going up in flames like that. But I mean, it's just so striking. And it has been the fodder for countless railroad memes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the caption that is most commonly seen with this is "Train from Hell." So,
ouch. So my favorite find that I wanted to share this week comes from the Cheyenne, Wyoming Visitors Bureau.
What is a locomotive?
And they went out to the UP steam shops to visit with Ed Dickens.
Very durable, rugged, rock crusher on wheels. They physically move your chest.
This video is geared towards the general public, so it isn't filled with all of the technical details that rail fans like to see. But they got some really nice images of the shops, and it's always interesting to see new views of the facility that may not have shown up in other videos. If you want to see the entire piece, it can be found on the Visit Cheyenne Facebook page.
By full-time railroad staff. Every community we travel through, there are just dozens, in some cases hundreds or thousands of people that appear to watch history roll by once again. As time goes on, there are parts of all machines that just don't last forever. And so it's up to us to keep breathing life into the machine and just use that ingenuity and just that determination that we're going to get this fixed.
For our last favorite find this week, we found this Facebook post. We're not sure exactly where it's from, but there's a good chance it's from Russia. So, trains aren't supposed to drift.
No, trains are not supposed to drift.
That is not a maneuver they are supposed to do, ever. So, of course, we went and we found our favorite instances of trains drifting on the internet.
That's it for this week. We would like to send a thank you to Nathan DeLay for his shout out to Railroad Showcase. Nathan is a rail fan and model railroader who shares his enjoyment of the hobby on his YouTube channel, and he gave us a thumbs up, so we appreciate that. Nathan, thanks. We're sending you 6 months of Gold Spike membership.
And thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.
And remember, keep your hand on the throttle and your eye on the rail.